Hello, my name is Scott Hamilton and welcome to the third half. As our regular listeners will know, we're a not-for-profit platform where we explore the intersection of people, planet and progress through conversations with people who continue to challenge, create and inspire. That's you, Matt. Today's guest is Matt Knight, co-founder of Really Fruity. At first glance, it's a charity that plants fruit trees and creates community orchards, but I suspect there's a much bigger and brilliant story here about optimism, community, and what happens when ordinary people decide to make a difference. I struggle to say really fruity. That's
a common factor. I think that's part of it. Good afternoon, Scott.
Hi, Matt.
It started in a pub. As all good ideas do. So in 2020, transport yourself back. Down the local pub from where we live, Ryan, James and myself, which is the Poachers in Sindlesham, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I've been teaching ecology for 14 years now, I guess, in the school. And Ryan, in 2019, I think it started, kept saying to me, Matt, there needs to be more fruit trees out there. And I was like, okay, what does that look like? And he didn't really ever have much of an answer to that. But this one fateful day, and we'll always remember it because it happened 2 weeks before lockdown, the first lockdown of COVID. We were sat in that pub and Ryan again brought up the same issue. Needs to be more fruit trees. And I don't know what was different on that day, but on that day I said, okay, what are we gonna do? Can we have a look? We look at this. What do we want to do this? And that's when James walked by. So he's the third co-founder. I hadn't actually met him until this point. And we kind of thrashed the idea out over a few pints of Guinness and watching whatever football match it was on at the time. And before we knew it, we were like, yeah, let's start. Let's do this. And we thought of every connotation of free fruit that you can imagine, and there's just no websites available, as you can also imagine. So eventually, after about an hour and a half of trying to find a website to kind of buy, we I think somebody went, really fruity, and we're like, what, .co.uk? And I'm like, nah, .org. So we typed it in, and whoosh, this is available. Would you like to buy it? And there it was born. And ever since that day, we've laughed at people ranging from Ryan Clark on the one show to the deputy lieutenant in Berkshire, all really enunciating their word. Really fruity.
I think it's also. I think because I'm a jock as well, and I roll my R's. So really fruity. It kind of like extends. Oh, this
the name you don't forget for sure, even if it's just for annoyance.
And if I'd been in the pub, say if I'd walked past in the pub that night and you'd grabbed me, I'd have said, no, we need to take something with slightly less R's on it or something else. But listen, I love that as an inception and spontaneity of an idea. I just grabbing somebody who's walking past and saying, do you want to join our gang? We've got an idea.
He just sat down and was like, what are you talking about? And we were like, we're thinking about starting a charity. And he went, I've got some land behind my house. It belongs to my uncle. Sure, let us use it. And that was it. It was like, right, let's do this then. It was very, very Jeremy Clarkson. And I often say that had we have filmed our early kind of interactions, we probably would have got ourselves an Amazon, TV program. But alas, we didn't.
It's never too late, Matt. There's always says that we could recreate that moment. I don't know. Did you have more hair back then? I'm doing this.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say because that it was lockdown. It was going for sure, but by lockdown, I was like, well, what's the point? I just it's easy to just take it off now. That was the beginning of the end. So
right. So listen, let's go back a bit. Tell us a bit about yourself and were you always drawn to nature and what's your background? How did you get here?
Yeah, very convoluted. I guess I quite often think if the young self went back and saw me now, would be like, that's a bit of a curveball. But yeah, it's an interesting way to have got here. I guess I've always been interested in nature. When I started as a kid, you would quite often find me knee deep in a local pond trying to catch newts, frogs, whatever, you know what I mean? I think really big at the time was Gerard Durrell's My Family and Other Animals, and that really resonated with me. I was like watching it going, this is me, but in wet England, I was always bringing stuff home, and my parents were like, "Oh, what you brought home now?" My parents were really into gardening, so that kind of got me in there. We went to a lot of National Trust property, so yeah, I suppose I brought up on quite a healthy diet of eco and forestry, and going up onto the moors, because I'm from Plymouth, so that was a local free activity that you could spend a whole day doing. So that's kind of for me, but never really fully got into it until we sort of I suppose started as a teacher and specialised in ecology.
Yeah, you don't sound as if you're from Plymouth, whereas I do still sound very Scottish.
Well, yeah, I do if I've had a beer or two. I think it's. It's just I get told as soon as the camera turns on, my TV voice comes out. I think I went to Surrey Uni originally back in '97, and I used to get quite a lot of stick. Who are it, Ambrose?
Yeah, boy from Plymouth.
Yeah, I wasn't a really broad accent, but it was definitely an accent. So I think maybe I spent a bit of time trying to speak the Queen's English, or the King's English, as it were now. So,
So you were destined for television then, right back then, didn't you? Like,
well, yeah, I still speak at 900 miles an hour, so it's an issue that I try and temper a little bit. But to speak fast down there, so I think up in Scotland, it's the extremes. So,
yeah, that's for sure. So the idea itself, then, I mean, that is quite interesting, because it almost feels like, we sit about the pub every Monday night, like watching the football, and like we always come up with ideas, and then we just stumbled on one. But because you have got such a strong background around healthy eating, and what you grow and what you eat, and digestive, and being around animals, maybe it wasn't sort of that much of a coincidence that you ended up stumbling across this particular idea.
Yeah, to be fair, I said I was teaching ecology for maybe 4 or 5 years prior to the inception of Really Fruity, and Ryan walked his dogs over in the park, and it came from an observation. It was just like, why aren't there any fruit trees in that park? I'm like, I don't know, like, why aren't there any fruit trees in any park? And then they sort of like got us thinking, and it was kind of necessity, the mother of all inventions, they say. So it's like, that's how it came about. It's as simple as that, really. Just a general feeling of, well, planting trees is brilliant for the environment, but what about actually having another facet to that? And what about providing food for us and for animals and things? And you know what? They don't all have to be oaks and rowans and ash, that which are brilliant as well. I plant those as well, but why don't we actually do something and try and help the communities out with some food as well? And so it seemed like quite an obvious idea to us, I guess, and that's probably why we rolled with it and kind of took it from there. We hadn't really thought too much about the delivery of that. Originally, it was going to be, I think I saw us as the Banksy of the tree world. We were going to go out in the dead of night and plant a tree, and then just kind of sculpt back into the shadows. But it's like, the more kind of you do research on that, it turns out that this is actually aggravated trespass, which is kind of imprisonable. So I was like, maybe we don't do that. And so that's how it was born, and we started to look at working with councils and communities and think, well, actually, let's do this properly. Let's set up as a charity, and then it snowballed from there, I guess.
And was that snowball? So that's really interesting, actually. And I know what it's like when you sit about with mates, whether it's in the pub or not, like, because just now it sounds like after 5 minutes talking that we're in the pub all the time. And clearly we're not. I'm not. You're not either. You're a busy man. But you sit around, you kick around ideas, and suddenly ideas become huge, don't they? You start off like, we'll just go and do this little thing. And then by the third pint and 4 packets of crisps, you're suddenly curing all ills and world famine and poverty.
Yeah.
How did you rein it back into something that was like, actually, lads, if we're going to do this, here's the baby steps. Here's what we're going to do first, second, and third. Talk me through that.
Yeah, and I guess we've kind of flipped from there as well. Now we're going back to the crazy stage where it's like the sky's the limit. We're going national and looking at investors and corporates and stuff. But you're right. At the beginning, actually, I think the thing that kind of hampered us, but also made us, was probably COVID, because we couldn't initially plant trees because it wasn't deemed as critical reason to be out mixing with people. So kind of scratched our heads for a bit. And I went back and looked at the charity's sort of mission statement, and it said providing fruit for free. And I didn't say fruit trees. So I suddenly thought for a moment, I was like, well, do we have to plant trees, or could we in fact actually just start growing some food, with the idea being that getting it out to food banks, because at that point obviously there was a real difficulty getting fresh food out to people, what with COVID and the shortages, people stockpiling, and that's where that kind of came from. So for the first 2 years, I'd say we didn't plant a single tree. We did plant a few trees on our own site, but we didn't go out into the wider world to plant the trees. And we concentrate completely on growing food. Like I said, just the remit of let's get some fresh food into local food banks. And after 2 years, there was 2.5 tons of the stuff. So it was quite, again, that was the thing I think we should have recorded, because just comedy. We started with a JCB. Scott. Dig into potato trench with a JCB. Why would you do that? But in our heads, that seemed like the obvious thing to do. And as we started, we took the first layer of dirt off, and there was some crud underneath the surface, which somebody had buried at some point. So we went a bit lower. And then there was more. Then there was some clay. So we kept going. And by the time we'd finished, we actually had a trench. I was thinking about opening up a World War One sort of memorial Somme museum, because it was that big and that deep. But we weren't perturbed by that, so we just took our potatoes and placed them in this trench and covered them over. And we knew the basics of every time it came through, we'd heap it up again. What we hadn't properly factored was the rain, and this would have made a great cut-to scene. At this point, the boys realised that the trench had now filled with water and the potatoes were floating, and that's pretty much what happened. And it was just like so awful at the start. It was like, so bad. It was funny, but we learned quickly. Within 2 to 3 months, we kind of grasped the basics. It really helped bringing in some specialists. We've worked with so many different people, but I think one in particular, Carolyn, one of our volunteers, she's been with us since the start, and she's allotment crazy. She's got a couple herself, and she works with lots of different communities. But she was like, what are you doing? Don't do that, do this. And it was like kind of the oracle. That's how I refer to her. We learned quickly, and we started growing all sorts of things. And as long as we had the strawberries and the raspberries, we were giving free fruit to the community. So we were able to, socially distance. It'd be like, hello, Ryan, across the field, and he'd be doing something over with the tomatoes, and I'd be in with the peppers, whatever, so exactly. Hey, everyone. And it worked beautifully. I was going to bring in people as well that normally would be on their own in the lockdown. So actually it worked. It worked on so many levels. And then somebody nominated us for one big thank you for the one show, and we'd only been doing it 4 months, so we already hit national TV. I was just like, this is, and so obviously it kind of snowballed from there. It was a very unusual beginning. COVID, like I said, both stopped us from just willy-nilly planting trees to give us all that time to think what we're actually going to do, and I suppose that actually helped us in the long run.
So my wife recommended that I reach out to you to have this conversation, and I'm very grateful for doing that. And then when I was doing my research, and we chatted the other week, and I've watched that one show clip 10 times now, and I am never, every time I watch it, I'm moved as much as I was the previous time. How does it feel for you guys watching that? Is that kind of, we were TV personalities 5 years ago. And I think it's incredible, as you say, it was after 4 months, but just walking through that as a moment, it's like, as you say.
Yeah, I think, again, I suppose at the time I hadn't really thought about it too much. It was like, wow, it's a bit of a mind meld. But I think, as I say, we're watching it, there's some really passionate people that they found to interview for that. And it is like, I think actually, when we watched it back, we were like, wow, you know what I mean? And actually it's been projects like that the whole way through. And this is the whole thing with the charity. It's there have been, there's immense pride from all of the people who are involved with it, like that we're doing what we do, but there's also the flip side. It's like, why do we need to do what we're doing? Why, and shouldn't this be done anyway, at the beginning anyway, with the food? And then we've worked with all sorts of different kind of clients. We've been to schools for the blind, and like heartbreaking meeting people that have got life expectancy of only 1 or 2 years. That's like literally that stuff is we find, and actually very, very hard to deal with. And we find that after we've done these events, we have to go and sort of download and just go into a dark place, because it is, it's, we're all dads and actually looking at this, and it's sort of what if that was my kid, or and it's so we do all of these things because we care and we want to help everyone, including the environment, but actually doing these different things, it is also really kind of touching and deep at times. So it's quite hard work from a mental point of view more than the physical. But it's easy to dig a ditch. Anyone can dig a ditch. I think it's the harder thing is making the connections and
Wait, you're saying it's easy to dig a ditch, and then you just told me a story 5 minutes ago about digging a ditch with a JCB and getting flooded and potatoes rising to the top. Can I just fact? Matt, I just want to fact check you. Digging a ditch clearly isn't that easy. You've just moved on to kind of like bigger and harder and more emotional things.
Yeah, well, I suppose it depends on which one you talk to in the charity. James is notorious. He was, especially because he'd just finished building his house. He had all these like man toys around, and we were like, just dig it with a spade. He was like, no, and he would. It was almost become a point of, I'm going to try use this, even if it's more difficult, and it would become a bit of a running joke. I was going to say, it's like it is actually easier with a spade, unless you're planting a huge tree.
Yeah.
To do that. Obviously, there's techniques to all of these things, and even that we've learned over the years, even from the don't dig round holes, dig square holes, and all these different things which kind of pop up as you go along, with the people you meet, and and the conversations that you have.
It's incredible, and listen, I do want to move on from that, from the one show and thing, but I hadn't quite appreciated it happened so quickly. But did you ever have a moment with the guys where you thought, oh my God, we've created a monster here? Like, especially so quickly, how do we keep feeding this and kind of move the business forward?
There was definitely a feeling of that, I guess. The whole time we were doing these kind of things, again, naturally kind of increases your presence, and so people start to notice you more. There's still thousands, even in our own town, that are freely who. There's still, it's quite easy to go under the radar unless your algorithms pick up on these kind of things and they share them with you, or you move in these circles. Obviously, if you're into environment at all, you're going to know who we are in this area, because we are so heavily involved with lots of different charities. We believe in collaboration. It's not kind of a competition. Others we found are a little bit more kind of they get a little bit frightened of us. I think they're like, you're some great big like media machine and you're going to take over, and I kind of get that on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like, well, actually, that's not the intention. And actually, the intention is just to help each other. But I do get that. But it is tricky for sure.
And I guess if we kind of roll right forward to this year, you've been you had your garden at the Royal Windsor Flower Show, and again, sort of like quite a kind of media spike around that as well. And I know that you've been so heavily dependent on volunteers. We've got mutual acquaintances who have come out and helped you build the garden and stuff like that. So that must have been a kind of real big event for you as well, yeah?
Yeah, and again, I think we were really fortunate to Joe Campbell and to the BBC and to Mel from ITV and people who have supported us over the years, but in particular, I think, and Phil as well from the Wokingham today. He's stepped down and now, but as we were starting up, these guys were kind of instrumental in helping us kind of promote what we were doing. I think we've probably done 7 TV things now, I think, over the last sort of 6 years, which obviously quite a large number of them. And all of these things, and I say the same about my school, because that's also been in the news quite a bit. It's a lot of people do these things, but if you don't really shout about them, then nobody's going to really know or hear about it. And actually, the world we live in, unless you are a Jeff Bezos and you happen to have loads of expendable money, then it does need funding. And I think I said to you when we spoke before that we've never really felt comfortable walking about shaking a tin, going, give us some money, because there are so many important causes out there. And I'm not saying that the environment is not an important cause, that's not what I'm saying, but actually when you rank it up against life and death and famine and, wars, and it's actually just going to drop down a bit. And so we can't kind of justify doing that. And so we're very particular about how we raise the money. And that is mostly either through grants or through working with councils. We've just about to start to do a project with Reading Borough Council, which is really exciting, where we're going to be employing somebody to actually run as a coordinator. So that's probably, that's a first for us, and that's really exciting.
And like, you make a really interesting point there about climate, environment, perspective, wars, and everything that's going on, and also, and again, we did talk about this. I'm a bit of a kind of climate enthusiast, but the discussion, like many at the moment, becomes very polarised, doesn't it? Like, yes, we've got a climate problem. No, we haven't got a climate problem. Ironically, UK had record temperatures last week. Blah. But what I love about you is your optimism and passion for this is incredible. Where does that optimism come from, and is it the same across with the guys as well?
Yeah, I think it's the commonality that kind of holds us together. We're a very kind of fun-loving kind of team, and I think a few people that have joined us from other teams have said, "You guys are really relaxed." And yeah, we're massively into the environment, obviously. But like I said, it's this left, right, up, down. It's just like people seem to be wanting to pick a side and put things in boxes and super glue themselves to the road, and and I get all of the real passion. I get it, I do get it, but there is so many people out there that are just like, nah, I'm not really subscribing to that. We're not going to win the battle of minds by kind of hitting them over the head with it, because it's not just a British thing, it's a human thing. If you keep poking a bed, it's just going to withdraw from it and just not engage at all. So we go more for, we love doing this. We can see the value in doing this. If you love doing this as well, please join us. Or if it's so inoffensive to anybody, not many people surely could say, "Oh, it's no rubbish planting trees." Well, I think everybody gets that planting trees is a good thing. So we are quite lucky in that way. We're not saying you can't drive petrol cars, or you can't, so we have an easier gig to sell, I think, than maybe some of our other charities that exist in this space. But yeah, it is very much not taking it too seriously. It is massively important, but it's also about living life as well, and it's a really compromise. So,
But Matt, you scare me. When you start talking about square holes and round holes and stuff like that, my wife will tell you that anything I've ever planted, I've just killed a chili plant recently, and it was sitting in my windowsill in 36-degree heat. The prospect to me, I don't know, I'd need to make a tea or something like that if I come round to work with you boys.
Yeah. I was going to say, over the years, we've killed plenty of plants, trust me. And like I say, there's things, and you learn as well, things like blight. I didn't even know what blight was when we started off. I'd never seen it down, not in the West Country, in the West Country. We don't know, it's for right. But up here, population's denser, people are growing, especially around the COVID time. A lot of people were growing tomato plants. It was really difficult to get any kind of gardening materials, because that's all anybody could do. So everybody was just growing their own food. But of course, the flip side of that was then there were a lot of people who didn't really know what they were doing per se, and then were developing blight, not understanding what it was and not doing anything about it. And obviously, then you've got a 3-mile radius of every time that occurs where you can potentially infect your neighbours. And so we got it into ours, and it killed all 600 plants overnight. It was heartbreaking. Like, honestly, it was like I've never to get sad over tomato seems bizarre, but when you've loved and cared for 600 plants, been pristinely pruning them and stringing them up, and it was a thing of beauty. We got probably a couple of 100 kilograms of tomatoes off it already. That was a good thing. But yeah, we lost 100 kilograms. We removed them and hoped the blight hadn't got in. But the big news at 1 million miles an hour, as soon as it touches that tomato plant, it's just through it. And yes, you can eat it, but who wants to eat a black, soggy-looking tomato? Nobody's going to do that. So, and then you start to go down, I can see what happened in Ireland now with the potato blight, and that's the same family. Oh God, does that mean we've got to dig up our potatoes? Yes, it does. Oh, come on. And then it just kind of exponentially goes out from there. And you learn all of these things, all the different pests and things to look out for. And it is a big learning curve, still learning.
I can imagine it. And, it's interesting that you're talking about what I expect was a very dramatic and a negative way moment there, but you're smiling and you've still got that positivity.
Yeah, we got it back now.
What have been the difficult points, the low points, when you just thought, oh my goodness, I just don't know if we can keep doing this, and being derailed by things?
Yeah, it's been a struggle. I was going to say, I spend a lot of time in the background trying to raise money. And there have been several where you sort of apply for a grant, maybe that you think, yeah, that this is a gimme. We're doing exactly what it is they're asking for. And had one this week, and it was like, sorry, thank you for your application. I'm sure it took you some time, but you didn't meet the requirements. I'm like, well, what didn't I meet? And you just don't get a response. And it's kind of a little bit soul destroying because you're spending like 2-3 hours of your late night coming back from working full time doing these things, and then it's just to get like a no. And so those could be particularly hard. But again, I've got a really, really, really supportive wife. More supportive, I think, than probably actually could be classed as my carer. I'm I'm openly neurodivergent. Diagnosed with ADHD, potential autism as well. It helps me focus, but yeah, I appreciate I can be a bit of a nightmare to both live and work with, as I think the other co-founders will quite happily tell you. Obviously now I'm CEO, they must just be like, oh god, he's off on one again. So, but it requires that kind of level of passion when it's part-time to drive it forwards, and it's become my kind of total passion, all consuming. So if things do knock me down, then I think, right, I try and look at it more as this is an opportunity rather than that's a failure. It's like, okay, right, though that didn't work, so what do we do now? And then pivot and switch to something else. I guess it's just with everything in life is to not get beaten and knocked down, and just remembering that what we're doing is to help people and to go from there. I guess the most difficult thing, it's the social media, I guess, as you will probably come across. Even on this, you'll have people. You probably, I don't know what if you get trolls or bots, on your feed. But when you put up posts, you always get one or two going, "Well, a lot of rubbish," and it's just like, why did you feel the need to? If you don't agree with it, just scroll on. You know what I mean? It's like,
You're boring. You do good as you're boring. Not interested in too long.
Your lefties, your eco-terrorists. That was one this week. I'm an eco-terrorist. I'm like, that's news to me. Okay. I'm like, all right, that sounds like a bad thing, but I'm like, planting trees, I'm not doing anything else, but okay. So yeah, that I think was the hardest thing, and trying to navigate that and not bite and letting it go and just kind of muting them and just getting on with life. So that, I'd say, was probably the most difficult.
So thank you for that, and thanks for your honesty and transparency around it as well. Talk to me about kids and how you see kind of like younger generation coming through and kind of like engaging in this discussion about nature and producing good, wholesome local food.
Yeah, and I think when I was growing up, and I don't know if it was the same up in Scotland, but there was still quite a lean towards knowing where your food came from. There wasn't masses of it, don't get me wrong, but probably more so than today. We are very lucky in my school and quite a few others, I guess, around that make a real effort to teach kids where the food comes from and actually get them out, get their hands dirty, because as you'll probably appreciate, you're competing with iPads, iPhones, PlayStations, YouTube, TikTok. It's like these things are instant dopamine, and these kids are just like, wow, they can find out about a million things in a minute. So you've got a lot to compete with to try and get their attention, and so we've spent time trying to do that as well, because if it's boring, then they're not really going to engage. So we've done that for various different ways, like the plant wave. That's really useful, where we can make music with trees. So kids, that blows their tiny minds. They're like, what? So that is wow. Bringing tech into the outdoors, and then it's like a marriage, and it's like, yeah, got them off their computer, we've got them outdoors, and it is, it is a hard sell sometimes, but yeah, got to keep going, I guess.
Do you find the hands-on thing actually surfing right there? But I sometimes like breaking that cycle of just putting well, it's not even a book anymore, isn't it? It's an iPad or a phone, like, right, put it down, come outside, plant something, watch it grow, eureka. Is that kind of more because it's hands-on and practical that you get them engaged more, do you think?
Yeah, for sure. And especially with the children that don't necessarily do so well within the classroom, find it a bit stuffy, a bit boring. Because our system, that's a whole another podcast right there. We could talk about, like Ken Robinson, and he talked about the Victorian education system, which we still adopt today, is still very similar to what was around 150 years ago. And I think that's the issue. I think time is moving on and developing at a rate of knots, and we're kind of, well, it's not kind of, we're not keeping up with it, I think, as a society, to actually teach children what they're going to need to know going forwards. And they're banning them now from social media, and I completely get that, because social media, like we just spoke about, can be a really, really toxic place. However, it can also be a wealth of information for other things. So it's kind of, it's a bit of a tricky one. There's a professor up at Reading University who is Professor Andrew Charlton-Perez, and I had a really informative lecture from him about 4 years ago, I think now. And I remember he put up on the screen, and one of the stats said that in 30 years' time, so that'll be 26 now, 30 years' time, it's estimated that 70% of all vocations within the UK are going to be either directly or indirectly with the sustainability market. That covers such a huge thing. But and it's like, but I teach that, but no one else. Not no one, but you know what I mean. Very few, unless they've come up with it themselves, like I have. Nobody's really teaching this. And now they brought in the GCSE in natural history, which is a great step forward, but we need to move a bit quicker, I think. We've always been a bit behind the curve. And so I think with children, as much as our charity can, get out into schools. And that's why we really love to work in schools, because that's where you're going to make the biggest difference, I think.
I mean, that's fascinating, actually. I'm going to have a look out for that as well. So, I mean, it's great. What have you learned about yourself through all of this? Because, God, it must have been a huge journey. And again, you've been very open about your own quirks and areas.
My own spicy, yeah. And that only came about because my son got diagnosed. He's like me, but like to the nth degree. So he's my wife is ADHD as well. Still not much chance, but he's a whole storm of it. And then when you're going through this assessment process, I'm like, oh God, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh God, wait a minute, it's all me. And it's one of the highest scores I've ever got. I got 86% in like as a match. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty high. If only I could have got that in law. It's one of those tests you don't necessarily want to score a high score in, but it's like, well, my friends were like, next time just give us the money and we will like, it's that obvious. But I've spent my whole life, and I'm going to be 48 this year, spent my whole life just living this weird kind of existence where kind of morphing and trying to reflect on what I think people want to do. And so I guess actually that it's been alongside that, and it's I'm a very big yes man. People ask me to do stuff and I generally go, yeah, that's cool, and don't necessarily think of what the effects of that's going to be on the rest of my life. So I guess my wife is probably, and Ryan's and James and everybody else's wives and partners are probably like, yeah, you need to spend a bit of time with your family as well. I do. Yeah. So we try and get them involved as much as we can as well. But
even a family is them coming out and planting trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I get the boys out. They really enjoy that. And actually, yesterday, a bit of a side here. Obviously, we grow a lot of trees in pots, which are going to be moved out to orchards and things. And one of my neighbours needed to resite a tree. And I was like, yeah, I'll do that for you and plant it somewhere else. And so it's been in a pot for the best part of a year, and it's survived the move, and it's over. It's about 12 years old, so it did quite well to survive that. I was quite careful with it. Yesterday, I noticed a leopard moth, and I don't know if you've ever seen a leopard moth before. Beautiful. They're like white and black. I'm like, wow, it's just hatched out. This is amazing. And my son was there, and he was like, wow, what's that? And we were having a talk about it. And then I AI'd it, and it was like, told me what it likes to eat. Can be very invasive, and it really loves eating orchard trees. I'm like, oh. I look down, and there's this hole in the bottom of the apple tree, which is obviously quite a sizable tree. And I poke at it, and it just collapses away. And it's, I'll have to send you the photo. You would not believe the size of wood it's eating, as it was one moth. But at this size chunk out the middle of the tree, it's just devoured it, gone all the way through. And I'm like, but my kid is like, wow, really interested in what's happening with this, and the fact that I'm letting it go. I'm like, because it is naturally part of our ecosystem. I'm like, I know you've just really damaged my tree, but you're doing what you do, and please don't come back to the same tree.
It's just like fly.
You know, off it goes, you know? Yeah. I let it climb it because it just hatched. It was very fragile, so I let it climb up onto the fence and just watched it as it dried itself out and off it went. But I was like, am I going to regret that? But you know, and again, it's part of the environment, part of the biodiversity. So you can't start doing things like that. So that's like because.
Is that like Circle of Life? Is that like a Lion King moment, the Circle of Life and stuff like that, isn't it? You know, don't mess with the biosystem.
Every part of the system has developed over millennia. You know, if you start snuffing things out of it, you're going to create an issue somewhere on that chain. Because we're seeing in the seas, like when we whacking out the sharks, you're taking out the apex predator, and then you get all kinds of problems like with the other fish taking over. And it's like definitely not for me to start playing God, I guess. So it's like, unless it's actually trying to kill me, I try not to harm anything. You know, obviously, if something's coming at me, I'm going to defend myself. But you know, without that's the limit. You know,
we went to a butterfly kind of museum up. No, it wasn't a museum. It was a whatever they call it in Bedfordshire once, and walked in there and there was butterflies everywhere. And my wife still tells the story of me running out screaming, ah! You know, like I just thought these butterflies were going to eat and kill me. Matt, on the third half, we like our irreverent sort of like, and we do quick fire. So quick fire, Matt and I, okay? Tea or coffee?
Tea.
Apple or pear?
Apple.
Ooh. What's the one fruit that nobody should ever put in a fruit salad? Nice. If you could plant an orchard anywhere in the UK, where would it be?
Inner London.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Who's someone you'd love to spend an hour planting trees with, dead or alive? Clearly, they wouldn't be very helpful if they were dead, but...
That's a no-brainer. David Attenborough.
Fantastic. Love it. Okay, we like our cheese on the third half, Matt, so we're going to just jump from anything that you can plant to cheese. Really important question. What's your favourite cheese?
My favourite cheese, I'd have to say, it probably a Stilton. Something with blue in it. I am rather partial to the blue, which I know affronts a lot of people, but for me, it's where it's at.
It's where it's at. It's because, well, it's kind of healthy as well. It's not a bit of blue and kind of like, you know, fungus and all that.
I don't know about that, but it tastes great. So
it's just nice for the red wine at the end of the night.
Yeah, this is it. It goes. Yeah, and that's my other thing. Red wine and cheese. I think after a hard day digging, I have been known to just eat cheese and drink red wine. It's what I like.
And a little slice of apple.
Yeah.
If the wife's
a bit of quince.
If the wife's around, she always makes me eat apple with it. So why are you bringing apple out with my cheese? I just want cheese and wine. I didn't say cheese, wine, and apple.
Chutneys, you know. I do prefer my fruit cooked, if I'm honest, but you know, I do like apples as well.
Brilliant. So listen, last couple of quick questions. One is, what's the big goal? Yeah, I mean, and you might not have one, but what's next? And then the second thing is a little bit of a shout out. What do you need from people? How can people get involved, get in touch? You know?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, a few things that we are like looking into. So we launched Fruit Trees for Schools this year. So we've been working up in the north of England in Manchester and Liverpool. So we worked with 40 schools up there. That was really great. So we're always looking for corporate sponsors to sponsor that program. We're going to start in different cities and work our way around the country. Again, it's really important to get into schools, get them some decent quality fruit trees with, you know, really give them some understanding on how to look after them rather than just send it and say off you go. So that's one thing that we're doing. We're also got our own community tree nursery that's going to be specialising in fruit trees. That's being built at the moment. Again, always looking for any kind of corporate sponsorship for that kind of thing. Or we have corporates come out and they volunteer up there and help out up there. Because obviously we are very lucky. We have no overheads. We don't have staff pay. We don't have headquarters at the moment. You know, we literally run it from our own houses, which is great because that means that all the money we do get goes on the project. So I suppose at some point when it gets big enough, that's obviously going to have to change. But for the moment, it's quite a good model. And now we're looking at we're in talks with developers on which is pretty exciting because this is literally hot off the press today. So we're talking to developers about an app that converts people's footsteps, how many steps they take, into planting trees. So that's very exciting. And yeah, we'll be looking to work with corporates to fund that as well. But yeah, so bringing it into more than just we're planting trees. It's sort of like getting out, we're getting healthy, you know, we're doing something, we're admiring the countryside, we're going here, we're going there, and bringing all of these things in, I think. So again, I think the goal is to make it more holistic, is to, it's not just about trees, it's about biodiversity, it's about wildflowers, it's about caring for our environment generally. Really love to get something local, where we have a sustainability centre. That's my field of dreams thing, you know. We currently have to drive to Hampshire, which doesn't seem very sustainable. To learn about sustainability seems a little bit weird, but there's so many different ones and ideas. And I think eventually we'll be creating packs for like homeowners that they like literally off the shelf. You want to do this in your garden? Here's the pack for it. And that's kind of the idea, I think, for that. And then maybe even because we have so many fruit trees now, looking at raising revenue through producing our own fruit products, whether that be drinks or, you know, fruit crisps or etc. So there's always these things, I think, that's you know, in the background, and it's about, I guess, being more sustainable. That's the issue for our charity now, so that we don't rely completely on grants. Because as you're probably aware, if times get tough, one of the first things to get hit is going to be what we're doing. So it's and then if we have got staff that we've got to pay down the line, then yeah, we are going to be in a bit of trouble. So I think shout out wise, always looking for volunteers, and that can be anywhere in the country, really can. We're looking, you know, we've got people down in Cornwall that plant trees for us. You know, we can arrange these things more locally, obviously Berkshire based, Reading, Wokingham. You know, if you really want to get involved with the growing of the trees, the grafting of the trees, and the more hands-on kind of side of the charity, then yeah, email us at info@freelyfree.org. And then the final thing that I said is anybody who's looking at social value or, you know, trying to decarbonize, then obviously we're in a unique position because we're small enough that you know, that we can actually sit down with you and do a bespoke plan. So we've got a couple of local corporates that are actually doing transportation, and we're going to be working with them. So the X amount of projects, we will plant X amount of trees, and so that kind of thing is I think really important to try. And I think really it's the cover now. As you said at the beginning, it was the focus. Now we're trying to spread, I think, a bit more, because it's going to pay, I think, to diversify our portfolio, because as we get bigger, we're gonna need to cover more areas, I think.
You're going to need a bigger pub.
For sure, yeah. And actually, the guy runs that now. Lovely, Eddie. Love Eddie. Yeah.
Big shout out for Eddie at the Poachers. I think I said the other week, just to bring this to a close, you know, like I was working for a large tech business based in Reading with a big red logo. People could probably work that out. Well, just looked at my LinkedIn profile, and we had a UK-sponsored chief exec business initiative as part of our ESG kind of program, where we were funding the planting of trees in some remote location and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, I'm not decrying it. That's fine. That's nice. But businesses in Reading and local in the UK and anywhere, you know, here's my shout out: get in touch with Matt and the team at Freely Fruity, because there's no better way to do it than in your own community, in your own environment, in your own locale, in your own country. I absolutely love talking to you. I've loved meeting you, and I am going to be coming and hounding you and being really annoyed and getting involved in this somewhere. And the conversation,
very, very welcome. Like I say, we love people who are interested in the same as us, and like I said, we the more the merrier, is because obviously we can't plant all the trees on our own. They're not going to plant themselves either. So
I refer to my previous comment. If I plant trees, I will not do a good job. So, but I'll do other things. But no, and this is a conversation about people, you know, and we spend a lot of time pointing out what's wrong with the world, you know, and conflict and toxic news and everything else. And it's really, really hard to just get your sleeves rolled up and make our own corner of the world better. Matt and I think that's what you and the team at Freely Fruity are doing, and God love you for doing it. I'm so happy you've come on here. Thank you so much for joining us on the third half. I will let you get on with the rest of your day now.
Thank you, Scott. It's been great speaking with you.
Cheers.
Just finished off the bread. So I walk over Soho and I read about Monroe, and I wonder, was she really what they said? Got a call from a good friend